All right. Welcome everybody to the East Africa Blockchain Virtual Event. Today we have an exciting panel on digital transformation of blockchain with two wonderful ladies. Our first speaker today will be Wairimo Mburu, founder and managing director of Finatech. And we also have Vanessa Grelet, president of Blockchain, the Social Impact Coalition. So how are you ladies today?
We're great. I'm good.
Great.
Awesome. For sure. I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation around digital transformation and blockchain. So we'll kick off with a presentation by Wairimo Mburu. Feel free to go ahead and give us your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, John. Hi, Vanessa. It's nice to meet you. I have when Kume reached out, she asked that I speak to digital transformation. So I'm going to speak to digital transformation, but I'm not going to be very long. I'm going to speak to a very short and succinct way. And the topic that I will speak on will be on the different stages and the different forms of digital transformation that I have observed within the developing world and the developed world. A little bit of a background on me. I'm a digital transformation specialist, and I've done quite a lot of digital transformation consultancies in Australia, where I lived and worked for a long time, and also in East Africa, so across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. So with regards to digital, I'm going to start with a discussion around the different themes in digital transformation, and just so that I can frame the conversation. So I did my analysis is based on basically grouping the different regions in where they scale. So we've got with digital, we've got foundation, we've got different levels. So at the very basic, the first level, just bear with me for a second. I'm just trying to bring my presentation up at the same time as. So we have different levels. So we have the first level is the foundation level, where you find most organizations are just acquiring their core applications for their organizations. So we've got people buying SAP, Oracle solutions, Microsoft solutions. We've got banks buying core banking solutions. That's level one. Then we've got the level two of digital transformation, which is more siloed. We have the organizations at this level have acquired the foundation level automation, but you now start to see that there's silos of different sorts of digital automations on top of the foundation level. So you've got a bit of blockchain happening here, a bit of IoT happening here, but we don't have a fully synchronized digital strategy across the organization. The next level up is level 3, which is a partially synchronized level, where we have partial stakeholder engagement in the organization. We have some involvement here and there from the senior stakeholders, but it's still not fully coordinated. The fully coordinated level is the next level up, which is level 4. With that, we have most organizations at this point having our digital transformation office established. We have a digital transformation leader within the organization. This is separate from the CIO because for most organizations there is for most organizations at this point within our developing world is that there's no clear demarcation between the CIO office and the digital transformation office. But for organizations in level 4, this has been achieved. You'll see that achieved in some of the leading banks locally here in Kenya. But then behind that, you'll see the insurance companies are beginning to catch up, and you can see that manufacturing is probably lagging behind with that. Then at the next level up, we have a fully living DNA kind of digital transformation organization. Everything is digital. there's a leader at the top who's speaking digital, and there's constant innovation happening. I think the perfect example I can use for our region at the moment is M-Pesa as an organization within an organization. Then around the themes, so the assessment was based on the levels and the themes. So the key themes within digital transformation I will probably be speaking to are just the typical digital transformation themes that we have. We have the customer at the heart of it, because digital is hugely defined by the customer journey. Then we have competition and how organizations see each other, and how there's a difference in how you see your competitor in a digital market. And also the person who you actually don't think is your competition today could be your competition. I mean, I believe that when Amazon started out 20, 30 years ago, in the beginning, I don't think the retailers saw Amazon as a competitor. Maybe the bookshops thought Amazon was a competitor, but right now Amazon is offering huge competing products that were not part of its core in the beginning. The third one is obviously data as a part of digital transformation, the role of data and AI. And then the next one is value, and how organizations actually drive customer value through digital transformation. So I'm going to now dive into those themes, and I will start with the customer. If you compare what we have here in the developing world and what we have in the developed world, is that we're still, in East Africa particularly, we're still adjusting to placing the customer at the heart of the digital transformation journey. That's for, I say this with regards to the legacy organizations. Now, obviously, we have the digital native solutions like M-Shwari, M-Pesa, and which are already automated, or have already automated the entire customer journey. But you find that especially for some of the banks, especially for business banking, you still have to show up at the bank for simple transactions. You still have to deposit your check personally and sign it personally and all that stuff. So we're still lagging behind. But with the developed world, there's a lot of innovation that has happened within the banking sector. Yesterday, I actually was on a panel, a Citibank panel, where they were rolling out some of the digital solutions that they built for their customers. And you can see that there's a shift in the mindset, where before the bank set the technology and defined what technology they were going to use to service the customer. But now there's a bit of a turn where the customer is actually the one who's defining what the bank is going to build for them. Then with regards to competition, you can see a lot of collaboration happening in both types of markets, in the developed markets and in the underdeveloped markets. But there is still a long way to go. There is not, we haven't gotten to the point where we have, say, we have collaboration, huge collaboration across different sectors in the market at a digital level. So I'm going to use as an example, what could a body like the Bankers Association do if they use digital technology to provide a platform where everybody in the country was serviced in a real-time kind of manner? And we haven't reached there yet, because we're still looking at our business models in a traditional way. But the risk we face with holding on to the business model that we used in the olden days is that with the world becoming a global village, we could have some companies come into the market and disrupt our local banking systems. So we must change our mindset and be open to where digital can take us. And a perfect example is what Uber has done in this market and continues to do in this market, and how it has disrupted our local taxi drivers. Then with regards to the next theme I have is innovation. It is an interesting topic for us. I think as a culture, I think innovation is hugely driven by culture. And I think in our East African culture, it's making mistakes. For innovation to exist in an organization and for people to innovate with freedom, they must be free to make mistakes, because if you're fully innovating, you're probably testing out maybe 10 ideas, and out of those 10 ideas, one is really great and will help your business scale. Another 2 to 3 are fairly okay, they'll improve your operations, but the remaining 5 or 6 are not great ideas. I think, as I look at the developed world, there's a budget allocated to innovation. There's that freedom to innovate and to go ahead and make mistakes. And I also have to say that's not been a smooth journey for, especially in a place like Australia, where I lived and worked for a while. But here, we're still very price sensitive. So telling somebody to roll out a technology project or an innovation project that may not necessarily add value to the business is not a welcome conversation at this stage. But for us to, again, grow digitally, innovation must be something that we must embrace. We must embrace making mistakes. We must embrace investing in things that may not necessarily give us some sort of ROI immediately. And the second last item I'll discuss is data as an asset. I think this is quite an interesting topic because it still feels a lot like, I am in technology myself, and I still feel like it's big data is growing faster than anybody can actually catch up with. So we're still at a very basic level locally, where for most organizations, we're at the level where we're just buying business intelligence tools and trying to visualize what information we have. We haven't actually, even for some organizations, we actually don't even have a data warehouse to collect all the information that the organization holds and use that information as an asset to support the running the business in terms of driving insights. So we're still there at the basic level. I honestly feel that this struggle is global. I don't believe that it's local to the East African market. So I think where we are probably a bit different is that the developed world is obviously investing more heavily in creating the right resources to support the growth, the explosion of data, and we are still lagging a little bit behind. And I think it's a little bit like innovation, where we are a little bit scared to try, but we're getting there. Now, obviously, the digital native companies, the Jumias in Kenya, the M-Pesas, the M-Shwaris probably have that at a better level than the digital legacy companies like the insurers and the banking industry. I'm going to briefly discuss blockchain because with respect to this event and where we're at with blockchain. So, and I will, this is going to be, I think I will not speak for East Africa, I'll speak for Kenya. So, I will say with Kenya being a fairly active technology hub in this part of the world, blockchain has been embraced as a technology. What has been the struggle is actually finding the use cases for blockchain. So we have quite a number of startups that are doing that are using blockchain and are building blockchain solutions. Most of them are leaning heavily towards fintech and crypto, and that's not unique to Kenya. That's in the world. So what I see with blockchain is I see the private sector leading once again, the financial services leading, and where the most fantastic blockchain use cases exist, which is in government. In cases like ID using blockchain as an ID, and you can imagine the power of that if you have a payment solution built on a blockchain ID system, and where that would probably create more value. And also in the health sector, the governments have kind of lagged behind blockchain, and I believe it's the same way they've kind of trying to catch up in terms of regulating data and data access. So in Kenya, we have had a blockchain task force that's been formed that was supposed to define a roadmap. John, maybe you can tell me if you've, I have not seen a solid project that has come out of what the task force was asked to do. So my guess is that they probably have a roadmap and a strategy that they gave back to the government that's probably still pending implementation. And I think this is not unique in our market. As I said, in the developed world, you'll see again it's the private sector that's leading the blockchain dialogue. And I think for blockchain to really thrive, it needs to be a private, public-private partnership for us to actually see the real benefits that the technology could bring. That's about it with regards to how the different comparisons of digital transformation across the different parts of the world. I'll pause here because I think we're now supposed to be going into a panel discussion.
Yeah, for sure. That was really, thank you, Arimo. That was really a great introduction. I liked a lot of what you had to say. By way of introduction, I run a blockchain startup called Melanin Solar,
Yes.
and we're using blockchain to facilitate peer-to-peer energy trading. And we have a project in Kajiado, Kenya. And I had a lot to relate with what you said. And what I liked is the first point of being customer-centric. That's what we have to do. We're working with the community on the ground to deploy our solution, and also focusing on the innovation aspects where we're training our developers to deploy the same solutions. So I actually think that blockchain will always be crypto-led because there is a huge financial incentive to drive the innovation. And that's why it will be most impactful. So I want to bring in Vanessa here. And maybe, Vanessa, in addition to introducing yourself and the work you do, you can react to Warimo's presentation and also, talk a bit about the work that you're doing with Impact and how it can relate to, startups in East Africa.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. By way of background, I've been in the blockchain space for almost 6 years now. I worked for a very long time for a company called Consensus, which is one of the leading companies in the Ethereum blockchain space. And then I now transitioned to an investment fund called Coin Fund, where we focus on in very early stage innovation in the blockchain space. And in parallel, I run the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition, which aims at creating opportunities for entrepreneurs to create and ideate on projects that are leveraging blockchain, but also have a social impact purpose, whether it's supply chain, identity, financial inclusion, energy, and climate. So building purposefully for impact. And so I was listening to the presentation, and thank you so much for this, and wanted to react to bringing additional sort of color of what can be done in terms of innovation and moving forward. So I think leveraging the private sector and the community in blockchain is really important. There are strong communities of developers and users in East Africa, and notably Nigeria, where that there's an opportunity there to create new projects, to have people become more understanding of the technology and be more comfortable with the technology. And so that's something definitely that should be leveraged. In East Africa, there's a lot of projects. You mentioned M-Pesa, but there's also BitPesa, who created an exchange where companies can lower the cost of their exchange rates when they're transacting across Africa. So I think that's super important. There's a lot of exchanges where people can buy and sell crypto, and either not be exposed to the volatility of the local currency, or be able to send money across the world with very low fees. So I think that's that's really, really key. In my former company, Consensus, there's something called MetaMask, which is the #1 wallet for Ethereum, and they just did a study about their user base, and sort of East Africa and Nigeria came out very strong in terms of number of people who are using the wallets. So, what's exciting is the global access to the technology, the global access to the knowledge and education, because everything since everything is open source, a lot of the documentation and technical documentation is online. If you want to have access and understand the technology, there's a lot of education and courses. So it's really open, and I would say wherever you are in the world, provided you have Wi-Fi and connectivity, which is a separate issue that blockchain won't save for, but has implications for. You're going to get this access. And I think on the government side, as you were saying, there's a lot of room for innovation also on the government side. And I think what we call CBDCs, or central bank-backed digital currencies, is creating a lot of excitement. A lot of the central banks are testing CBDCs. So we had worked with South Africa on some testing. And so I think there's a movement there where the governments are understanding that, maybe cash, physical cash is not going to be the way forward, and having people interact with digital currencies is going to be the way forward to increase transaction, increase financial inclusion. And so it's going to take a little bit of time in East Africa and elsewhere to have that adoption. China is moving very fast, but I think that's one of the use cases for blockchain that we'll be seeing in the coming future.
Excellent. So just to pick up from there, I think there are two themes that are clearly coming out in terms of the private sector and the public sector. So Wairimu, given that the blockchain space is a very agile space, in my case, before getting into Melanin Solar, we had sort of an incubator called BitHub Africa, that we trained our own developers in blockchain and our own coders, and it was quite it took years, and it was quite a shift in terms of mindset, moving from Web 2.0 now to Web 3.0. So is it really possible to transform these huge organizations that you work with to this degree? And what are the sort of the gaps that you're seeing that have led to inertia in terms of implementation of the task force report by the government, and so on? And Vanessa, you brought up CBDCs. How will that impact privacy of the average citizen? Because with cash, people in the village can trade with each other. With CBDCs, it's a platform that's controlled sort of from a top-down infrastructure. So what were you advising these governments to do?
Okay. I think the question was whether it's positions to implement blockchain, and of course the answer is absolutely yes. I think, like any new technology, what we knew about blockchain, I mean, we've progressed a full
Yes, I think your connection is quite shaky. I think we let it come back. But Vanessa, maybe we can jump to you as Warimo's connection comes back.
A lot of information is to work. You can still hear me.
We can hear you now. Yeah, I think Vanessa, maybe we can pick up with you.
Sure. Maybe while she's, let's see. Let's wait until she reconnects. It seems to work.
Are you back, Werimo?
I apologize. I think and I probably need to switch to a different provider. But what I was saying is that yes, we absolutely can. The large organization can absolutely implement the blockchain solution, and the best start is in partnership with the startups. So the startups have gone into this space. They've built the knowledge, and so the startups have the knowledge, and what the large organizations have is the use cases for it. So that's a great place to co-implement the solutions together. As to why the government, I'll speak for our government is lagging behind, because in as much as East Africa is a region, we still have different governments. I've not seen anything, to be honest, as to why that could possibly be on a back burner. But as you understand, as the work of the task force was coming to an end, COVID hit, and so that probably wasn't a priority at that point for the government, and the priority was to first deal with the pandemic. Yeah.
For sure, Vanessa.
Yeah, so privacy, of course, is a concern for everyone. 3 weeks ago, and not in Africa, but the European Central Bank did a survey about digital euro and privacy was like the #1 concern for all the respondents, and the capacity of the government to understand basically everything that you do in terms of transaction is a concern. So I would say that the privacy features are embedded in the technology that is rolled out by the government. So you can have CBDCs that are totally respectful of privacy, and CBDCs that are less respectful of privacy. And all that is a technology choice and a question of transparency and making sure that people understand what are the implications if one CBDC is less focused on privacy than others, that they will have access to all your transaction. Like when you have some sort of payment system like PayPal, etc., you know who you're sending this to, and the record of all that will be something that the central bank will have access to in case of retail. That being said, CBDCs is 2 levels. It's wholesale CBDC, and then it's retail CBDCs. So the wholesale CBDC will be with the relationship with the existing banks, and retail is direct to individuals.
Awesome. Right, let's talk a bit more about hubs. Remo, in your presentation, you mentioned that Kenya has been a hub for digital innovations. I think the whole world knows the story of M-Pesa, which is really what I would call a stable coin that's not built on blockchain. It's built on cloud server architecture. What can we do to make Kenya the hub of digital currencies, including cryptocurrencies? We have the Konza tech city being built, and my personal opinion is they're focusing on an important area, which is digital media, but digital media is at its peak. So probably what would be more helpful for Kenya is focusing on an area that we have been traditionally strong, having had digital currency for 15 years plus. So does this sound like a good idea for a public-private partnership? And to Vanessa, startups in East Africa are very poorly funded, yet this is where the great ideas come from. So what can you do? I know Consensus has been funding a lot of ideas on the internet, Web 3.0 ideas. But what can you do to bring this investment to where it's probably going to have the highest return?
Okay. I think I think I'll start. Okay, I'll go back a little bit. The reason M-Pesa was a successful story is because it solved an everyday man problem, and for us to be able to do, we must be providing a solution that is solving everyday man problems. I don't see, and a lot of people have said, some people had said crypto will not last, it needs, but my argument was it needs to be regulated. I don't see, I think that and the future is here with us. For us to drive that, it is a great use case for a public-private partnership. I don't know. I'm aware that our governor is also interested in building a digital currency. China, like Vanessa said, China is probably leading, and I think for Kenya we are currently at probably research stage. But it's and I agree with you, John. It's perhaps maybe a better place for us to start because we've already been strong in the area and we already have the local talent that, or if and then we can move into, and whether crypto ends up becoming a global currency that's like American dollar that's used for buying. I'm interested in seeing where we get 5 years from now, actually.
Yeah,
Awesome.
John, you bring on a great question, is funding innovation. There's never enough money, anywhere you are in the world. The blockchain space has been lucky in terms of finding mechanisms for funding, initially with ICOs, and now with participating in the technology where you can get rewards, etc. I would say if you were an entrepreneur today and you had a blockchain project, the opportunity here is it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. You can have access to funding through hackathons and programs. And so that's pretty exciting. But I think, when you're in the early stages, I would recommend to go through that. Everything is online also since COVID. And so that broke down all the barriers, right, of participation. And I think if you just scroll down on like all the global hackathons that are happening and you can participate there, and you get, $5,000 prize to get started. And then, we've had a lot of companies before they got funded by VCs, they actually went through hackathons, they went through incubators, et cetera. So for East Africa, I think, and for each country, when they're creating this digital hub, thinking also about either creating these opportunities for incubators and really having everyone, augment their knowledge in the space and have mentors, et cetera. And I think really the opportunities here is that it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. If you have a good idea and it addresses either the local issues or global issues, you're going to have an opportunity. That being said, of course, when you get to later stage and VC stage, it would be great to have like great funding partners on the ground. And maybe you can think about about banks and companies who want to also participate in that and support local entrepreneurs. I think it's all about creating the ecosystem and this access. But I feel it has been made a little bit easier since in the past 2 years to get that access. At least everyone is available on Twitter. I mean, in the blockchain community, it's much more open and easy to ask for feedback, ask questions in communities and Telegram channels, etc. So there's a lot of connectivity here, which is important when we were in person, but now we can do online, and I think that's pretty exciting.
Great. Talking about ecosystem builders, we have Mr. Kayode, who's joined us for the call. And I have a question for you. I myself have also been, for the past 7 years or so, building community around meetups around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and later on blockchain engineering. So could you talk a bit about your experience? I know ABI has been there for some time, so maybe you can give us sort of a snapshot of what's happened the past few years.
Thank you very much, John. Hello, everyone. For the past few years since 2016, I get to know about what is blockchain Bitcoin itself, and that was through a governance program there in Ghana, and was through that, and I get to understand what Bitcoin is and other cryptocurrencies. And when I went back to Nigeria, we're trying to understand what it is, what blockchain or Bitcoin can do for the country, or starting from Lagos itself. Then we started working on having a meetup. Meetup back then was a very hot cake to able to gather interesting individuals or enthusiasts that are quite interested in Bitcoin or blockchain itself. And funny enough for me, that was one of the very few times for me to have an hands-on experience on trying to meet individuals, because I was so surprised to see, including banks, big banks in the country, trying to reach out and trying to understand what it is Bitcoin and blockchain is. So then we have to do several meetup, several areas and part of Africa, also part of Nigeria specifically. We tried to get more people coming on board. Some actually in between was when the Ponzi was actually raining. We have folks trying to be so smart to get people's funds to use for several other use cases. So if you come out with anything as far as meetup is concerned back then, you'll be also tag along. But based on the track record of what it is you have done previously and people you are inviting or people you are working with for the programs, and people try to check your credibility a bit and trust what it is you are doing. And from there, you move to having larger community in having conferences. That was when we had the first conference back then in Lagos at Civic Center. And that was like close to, more than 2,000 or more people joined that day. I'm like, so the thing was that folks were actually doing Bitcoin on the side, but because back then there's really no government support and a lot of bad names about these things, folks did not come out. So I'm like, so if people can come out all the way from every part of Nigeria for this particular program, meaning there's more to this story here in Nigeria. So that was how I get to understand individual interest when it comes to cryptocurrency and building community in Nigeria. But back and forth, I went to do my master's program, and then I was like, I think I need to understand what businesses in the country are using blockchain for. And through them was when we started the hackathon program, reaching out to students in the school, and now it become full-fledged for us to now pull out some certified program on blockchain technology itself. So for me, that's my background. Start organizing meetups, get to meet people individually to know what it is they are doing, and again, the rest to the point of having conferences to get to meet larger communities, and also build credibility and build interest, and give the people the right direction on where to go and what to do when it comes to this blockchain technology in the continent. And now it's gone to full-fledged running an institute that focus more on technology part itself. And for us at ABI, we have 3 priorities. First is the running of education and training itself, and second thing is the research. And now we are working on blockchain deployment with government across the continent. Thank you.
Awesome, really awesome. I think Nigeria is now the global leader in peer-to-peer Bitcoin trading, if I'm not wrong, either number 1 or number 2. And Kenya is probably number 4, number 5.
I would say necessity. I would say necessity is the mother of invention. When the exchanges are banned, people need to go back to the first promise of blockchain or Bitcoin itself, which is to go peer-to-peer. So it's still growing.
So that's disruption right there. You missed a great presentation by Wairimo on sort of disruption within large institutions like banks. So I want to tie this in with the question we have on Ethereum by Afro Valley. Ethereum has brought about what we call decentralized finance, DeFi. And I read a statistic today that the DeFi economy is now bigger than JP Morgan, and I believe it was Citibank put together. And DeFi has been around maybe two to 3 years. So my question probably to Vanessa, because she was in the kitchen when DeFi was being cooked at Consensus. What's going on? What are your thoughts on this? Will the banks get totally annihilated by DeFi? And to Kayode, what are your thoughts on the same DeFi in Africa? And I want Werimo to. I'm setting up Werimo to be the last one, so that you can give a reaction to sort of the huge disruptions that are happening now on Ethereum and cryptocurrency in general. So we'll start with you, Vanessa.
Thanks. Yes, DeFi is definitely transformational and will continue to grow in the coming years. For the audience, decentralized, what we call decentralized finance, is the capability to technically participate in a protocol and generate returns and yields. So you can lend your Ether or your Bitcoin and get 5%, 10% return, which is, something that is completely different from what you get from a bank, right? If you put your cash in a deposit, you're lucky if you get 1% return. And so the yield that DeFi generates are very high. In order to take advantage of DeFi, sometimes you need to be very technical, and it allows you to do things that before only the banks or the large players were able to do. So let's say I had, JP Morgan shares as an individual shareholder. I wasn't able to lend my shares and get a return because I lent my shares. This is happening in DeFi. You also have things that are what we call CeFi, at the nexus of CeFi and DeFi, where it's more user friendly. You don't have to be a crypto native engineer to leverage those returns. And so, for example, in some of the centralized exchanges, you'll be able to stake your tokens and also get a return. So DeFi is not going away. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to innovate. And I think the fact that it has such a wide community of open source, developers that continue to build on it is really going to be the key. It's obviously not going to replace the banks today. I think some of the banks will try to also leverage that technology and offer those returns to their clients at some point. But right now, DeFi is growing, and it's a way for people to protect their money and increase their assets in a very significant way, and that is totally open and available to everyone.
Kayode?
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Recently, as well, I just read through some donation from World Economic Forum, and I saw they are quite big and interested in DeFi, which make me quite curious. What DeFi? Why are they looking at DeFi, and what use cases it is? Yeah, all right. Well, but again, based on where it is, they are more in Europe and also in America. So actually, as Vanessa said as well, I mean, DeFi is not going anywhere. It's just going to grow and keep growing. Here in Africa, I mean, John, I mean, you can also confirm as well that the DeFi community in Africa is just growing. I mean, we don't really have large population or large projects. I mean, already looking into DeFi so far. I mean, if they are, they're just like very few compared to what people majorly want to look into, which is to actually trade cryptocurrencies. I mean, the majority part here in Africa are actually looking into trade cryptocurrencies and get instant return while they are on it. And probably later in the future, for those that are playing the long game, they're going to look into DeFi to make sure they lock up some funds and get some interest out of it. So for us in Africa, it's quite growing. We hope very soon we get to see much more applications and much more use cases and features here in Africa to get people to use DeFi. I mean, this is a long game. I mean, there'll be a lot of benefits for everybody that partake in it.
Excellent. Warima, your reaction?
You know, when I think about it, I mean, I would love to be sitting here having a currency and I could buy anything from any part of the world with that currency. I mean, that would be absolute. You know, I can buy something in Russia, I can buy something in Bulgaria, I can buy something in Australia, I can buy something in Canada. But the reality is, and I see where crypto is going with that. It's that sort of from a use case perspective. I don't know what to call it. Just removing that sort of central control of currency. But I also don't see the central banks going away. I think this is something that will have, for it to be completely successful, there will be some regulation around it. And once the regulator is on board, and I believe that that's why some of the governments are already exploring the idea, or even building, like China, building their own cryptocurrencies. There will be have to be some participation of that. I don't know if you're. I don't see a big explosive growth without government support, but I am 100% convinced technology is here to stay.
Yeah, I think that was very nuanced. My thoughts are probably the large institutions, be they central banks or other financial institutions, will be forced to reinvent themselves. And I think the idea of CBDCs is just that, figuring out how to adopt these technologies. So I think I want to sort of, as we begin to wind up, is sort of just look at the future of digital currency at a global level. And as I mentioned before, Nigeria is really a leader in the space. So I want to go back to Kayode and maybe tell us what do you think will come. I know your central bank recently put up a de facto ban on Bitcoin trading using banks. What has the situation been since the ban? And what do you think is likely to happen, given that that market is ahead of probably everybody else in terms of peer-to-peer adoption and public policy from the government?
Okay, thank you. For me, I actually have a mixed reaction because blockchain, to some extent, we keep saying it's a new technology, It has been existing, I mean, since time immemorial. Those that it came to light almost like over 10 years ago. One thing is that with every government, every new thing that come into play, we need to come up with accurate and fair policies to either support it or negate it. So, and even if we look at it very well, everything that we do, including making use of Zoom businesses or even healthcare system, all these things are established on policy. If there's no policy backing any of these things that's happening, then they cease to exist or it become a criminal offense. Especially in Africa, also in Nigeria, as you mentioned, we all know how funny our politicians can be and leaders can be. Anything that they really don't have control over or can really have a certain percent of benefit to it themselves is going to really cause a lot of uproar than having a young person or just somebody on the road trying to have access or even gain much more percentage of the wealth more than them. So the future for me, in terms of some of these happenings, right from Nigeria, it's really going to get some kind of worse. We should be expecting more of aggressive actions against it from the government. I mean, some countries on the continent that actually outrightly ban cryptocurrencies or even exchanges itself. They can't ban cryptocurrency, but they can ban the use of it, the exchange. So, I mean, we should expect much more in terms of the future. Else, the government can have access to themselves. And the way they can, in quote, have access is through when they have launched their central bank digital currency. and that too is under research and under understanding. The most funny thing is about when it comes about this policy and even having government to work on central bank digital currency. Some folks have been in this space, like I'm talking about private individuals and also some individual academia as well, sort of gone into to really research how this thing can work for the government. But it's quite interesting that the government itself will never give opportunity to young folks or those that will feel quite experienced in this space for them to work with, share them their idea and share them information for them to able to run with it and come out with interesting policies, number one. And number two, come out with interesting for infrastructure to support the use of this technology, because eventually it's not only them using technology, it is all using technology, everybody. I don't know about Kenya or South Africa, but I know there's a Jamboree in Nigeria. I'm in Rwanda, by the way, because of ABI. There's a Jamboree in Nigeria of having central bank or the Nigeria Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. They always call this Jamboree meeting of you meeting private people meeting the government and telling them what is going. I can tell you that this meeting has been happening since 2018 till today. The funny thing is that the government will go and be sapping all necessary information from these private folks instead of it to encourage and go to the drawing table and build something more sustainable. They will take this information to strip the innovation, because now they know people are not using exchanges. So, this guy's in exchange, let's cut off exchanges. These guys are using this, let's cut it off. Instead of them to, and again, they call the meeting tomorrow. I can bet you that some people will still go there tomorrow and say another thing. I mean, it's good to be in the Ivory League of what the government is calling me. I mean, let us come back to our senses and realize that this meeting has been happening since 2018, and either for them to even give us a good policy or good supporting structure, they go back and strip up the innovation. So I mean, just quite back and forth. This is my own mixed reaction about the future of cryptocurrency in Nigeria or moving forward. Best is the peer-to-peer, which is what it is right now. But I'm sure they're also looking into even strip this peer-to-peer, because you need to still go to your bank transaction and send some transfer of the money. And if they discover, even though you write a wrong narration, probably it's for cake decoration or something, even though it's a Bitcoin or crypto exchange within you and the person, they can find a way to trace your bank history and probably arrest you or something, because they will just come forward and say that they don't support this thing or find a criminal issue against it. So I'm sure they can go to this length as long as they don't have the power, or there's not going to be a power for them when it comes to cryptocurrency or peer-to-peer exchange. So the journey of cryptocurrency on the continent is a very long one, and I want us to really buckle up for any makeshifts that are coming between. Even regular everyday fintech platform like Flutterwave, Paystack, Bamboo and the likes. I mean, government just even stop allowing Nigerians to do international stock trading. Can you believe that? That's not cryptocurrency, just stock trading. The government stop you for using your bank card to have access to those things. They still want you to make sure you are trapped with the local currency, which is not even appreciating, is devaluating by every day. You go to market, you buy things of 1,000, next day the same thing you buy 1,500. Still I can't go to the bank and withdraw my dollar. If I go to withdraw dollar, I'll be given the local currency, and I'll be at the mercy of the bank itself, not the standard exchange rate for me to withdraw. I mean, several of these bottlenecks are up everywhere. I mean, for me, let us buckle up for a very long ride, especially countries that are very liberal about cryptocurrencies. But again, let us buckle, because we can't be so sure of the next move they have for us. But the future of cryptocurrency is very bright. And let's make sure that those that are doing the peer-to-peer trading with, we trust them for them to deliver and encourage them wherever we find any way to support them.
All right. So let's go to a question from the audience. So what do you guys think about the Chinese digital currency? Will there be sort of a war for the world's reserve currency, and will a cryptocurrency be the winner? And so we can start with Werimo this time. Any thoughts on this question?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think, I mean, I can only answer it so far as a technologist, but really not at the level of, I mean, why do we have central banks? Why do central banks exist, and how traditionally over the last, I don't know how many years, how have the reserve banks, central banks worked with the rest of the markets? I mean, I don't know if there'll be an ultimate winner. What I know is that there is no way it's going to be successful without the regulator coming on board. But the struggle that the governments are having is that they're playing and the technology is probably moving faster than they anticipated, and it's hard to regulate something that you don't understand. So you have to. The only way I'll use Kenya as an example. The only way to regulate something like this is to keep the task, to have a task force and of experts, and to keep having conversations not only locally but globally. I like that the governments are at least going into research on this, but I think we also appreciate the other side of this. It's great, it's fantastic, but as with every technology innovation, we have a challenge, and the challenge is some of these currencies are being used to pay for crimes on the dark web. So the government feels the need to move in, and they have to move in for it to become valid. But I think it's really going to take a lot of talking on both sides. So it is going to be a long ride, definitely not a short one, but we'll get there.
Yes, Vanessa?
So in terms of the different, cryptocurrencies, I think, there's room for everyone at this stage. Will some try to, instrumentalize the digital currency? For sure. And everyone has been doing that, without digital currencies, and governments have been doing that. The US governments has certainly have gotten, dominance of the dollar. So I think some institutions will be more aggressive in doing that and driving adoption, and also linking the expansion of their currency with their economic expansion. So I think that's just the way it's going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a winner or a loser. I think it's going to be how convenient it is to use each currency, and that's going to drive adoption, really.
All right, convenience. So, Kayode, any thoughts on China in Africa, and would a Chinese digital currency, compete for status with the dollar in Africa? Because a lot of countries rely on the US dollar, or are we likely to see these global cryptocurrencies outcompete the Chinese currency or the dollar as well?
I'm kind of laughing internally because my first saying is I will encourage all Nigerians to go and learn what's the Chinese language? Mandarin or something. Exactly, because I can tell you how indebted the government of Nigeria is towards the funds of Chinese government. So, and we are not sure the next few years they can able to pay back. So if not, then individuals become like a slave to China, possible. And again, if you check the map of the aid of China on the continent, it's quite massive. Look at Djibouti. If it's true, Chinese police people are the one trying to monitor the street. If it's true, Djibouti, Eritrea as well. Some small, even Cosmos, so smaller country as well on the continent. Cosmos and I mean East Africa, South Sudan, and Sudan itself, and some other part of Africa as well. So I mean, Chinese governments are actually giving largely, and we all know if it's true about the model, if they will give money to collect resources. except from very forthcoming leaders like here in Rwanda, some other country as well. They are quite very straightforward and transparent on when they are dealing. So they might not end up being in a trap or set up by the Chinese government. So if the CBDC from China become full-fledged, this country, I feel that they're indebted to China will be the first point of call, I mean, in Africa, to typically start using their CBDC. And in China, once something becomes mainstream, or subordinate of Chinese persons or organization or supporting person also become part of it. So, and that gives them much more adoption and several other use cases. So for me, this is my own thoughts in Africa about China. I mean, Chinese people have been very interesting and also giving in their contribution as well. I mean, the mass production of equipment and also get it as well are from China. So, I mean, we need to give kudos to them, even though we also have some of those resources here in Africa as well. But for me, based on their aid here on the continent, I'm seeing possibility of more adoption and use case of our CBDCs eventually if it comes to life, as against the one from the British Council or from the British community.
All right. Yeah, I tend to agree that the Chinese digital currency, if viable, will have some influence, especially when we talk about foreign trade, because there's a lot of trade between African countries and China now. So I see traders having wallets with multiple currencies, which will also include the Chinese currency. I think my more controversial view, which I'm known for, is I also think that some African governments will peg their currencies on Bitcoin reserves. I don't know what you guys think. Is that too extreme? I'm thinking of countries like Mauritius, the smaller countries, Mauritius, maybe Rwanda, or maybe Botswana, will in the future sort of decide to hedge their currencies against what will now be deemed internet currencies. So any quick thoughts on that?
Actually, in Rwanda, they're most likely going to hedge it against their local currency, which is Rwanda franc. I think they're also already working on it, but it's going to be always quite private and internal. But I can't speak for Mauritius because Mauritius has been really top notch when it comes to fintech destinations on the continent. So they might actually hedge towards Bitcoin, and also places like Zimbabwe as well might also look into Zimbabwe, Zambia can also head into cryptocurrency as well. But for me, I feel your view is quite on the extreme. Let's be moderate. And let's try out the market and see the market response. And from there, we can really come up with the full-fledged research of what it is people are hedging now. Well, I mean, for countries as Rwanda, I can tell you boldly right now, they're going to go into their own currencies as against cryptocurrency itself.
All right. Thank you for that. So I think where Remo had in her presentation talked about one key point, which is big data and data protection. Vanessa, I know Consensus has been working on some digital identity projects. So what's the future of big data in relation to blockchain?
That's a really interesting question. I think the blockchain and way it's structured is not always comfortable in managing large sets of data. So the way you see it is a lot of off-chain management and then anchoring into the public blockchain. But I think that adds a lot of security to that, and I think we'll find creative ways to always enhance the decentralized storage, etc. And in terms of identity, I think creating self-sovereign identities and link it to credentials that are backed by government, etc. We really hope that that's going to be a much easier way for people to interact in the future, and justifying their identity, allowing them to conduct operations and transactions which they've been prevented from doing. That being said, the initial issue of government recognition of identity, that it can be problematic in some countries. the blockchain is not going to solve for, because it's a question of the actual data, the first information about the individual or the object. So I think we'll get to a more digitally native type of identity, and people will get more and more comfortable with that as we demonstrate that the risk of fraud is really low. But I think people need to get comfortable with that.
All right. So let's have our closing remarks. We'll start with you, Werimo. Your closing thoughts on digital transformation and blockchain in East Africa or Africa in general.
We live in a very exciting time. We have sometimes lagged in adoption, in technology adoption, but in the same way we've been able to leapfrog with adoption, with technology adoption. I feel that because of our ability to innovate, we will. I believe that. We are right. I think we're at maybe level 1 or level 2 of digital transformation in some organizations, but we are still going to be able to leapfrog with some technologies. But with some technologies, we might not be able to leapfrog. I believe that with things like blockchain, we might leapfrog. I think that with things like analytics and AI, we really need to get going now, or we're never really going to get going. So those are my closing remarks.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish you had more time to talk about AI, because I believe it's very important in digital transformation. But we'll leave it for that for now. Vanessa, you can have the closing remarks.
Yeah, so I think I'll be speaking hopefully not for the entire blockchain industry, but just trying to be the advocate here. It's really a generational opportunity for everyone in East Africa to jump on the bandwagon, get educated, and have access. So I think it's pretty exciting, and racing the innovation in East Africa, in addition to having access to the global knowledge and talent, is going to be crucial.
Okay, so for me, I like to encourage everyone, whether young or old, everyone trying to support, build digital infrastructure and digital transformation of the continent. So please continue despite having challenges that they find themselves. Because if the road were easy, things will not be as good as where it is right now. And there's this Shakespearean quote that says, "On easy lies the head that carries the crown." Few people like me and you are like the frontliner, just like the pandemic frontliner health people. We are the one trying to shape and have a positive narration and narrative about blockchain and other digital currencies use cases here on the continent. And you'll be surprised to all of us that people are actually looking at us, whether in our private life or even on social media. Even now, people are watching us and trying to see and hear what are these guys saying, what's collaboration like. So I want us to please continue to encourage them and give them more support, and open a lot of Africans, especially in Africa, to more accessible opportunity as against our friends from the West or Europe. Africa, I will not say we are limited to opportunity, but there are vast many opportunity, but it's quite all dead or coded somewhere else, except you have people in the community to share some of the opportunity with. So basically for me, and also in interesting times, pandemic really make cryptocurrency come up forward. People prefer to make cryptocurrency payment than digital payment rather than making use of fiat. To limit access to contact the COVID-19 and stuff. And good that we also have the vaccines, but again, several precautions are meant to be taken into place, and which now the technology, using digital transformation technology, is also helping to curb that. For me, again, just make sure we encourage young folks and everybody to be some sustainable for the continent.
Awesome. On that note, I think I've learned a great lot from you guys today. Education is key. Leapfrogging is now possible with the digital transformation. And from Vanessa, we have to think big, think global, to really develop our innovations and opportunities here in Africa. So thank you to Kume and the East Africa Blockchain Event team. This has been the Digital Transformation Panel. Asante and kwaheri.
Thank you, John.